The Girl from Tomango by Rick Ferreira. Read by Hugh Carr. In the bright coolness of the hotel room, Sinclair scrambled madly out of the wilted linen suit and the sweat-soaked shirt. He stepped into a pair of shorts that he found after a minute of frantic fumbling in the open suitcase on the bed. He reached for his sunglasses and thrust his feet into his sandals, begrudging the time it took to secure the straps. And all he could hear, above the sighing of the coconut trees that filled the room, was the sing-song voice of the young man at the reception desk below.
"She worked here, did you say? Now let me see. Lily Carr. Oh yes, the pretty light-skinned girl. She left suddenly, sir. Just like that. Got a job with the film company, I expect. Must be in Hollywood right now, having a big time. Rio said she was better looking than that Carmen Jones girl. We all said."
But there was his own voice, cutting off the flow. "She couldn't have. I worked on that film location. She didn't leave Tomango. At least not with us." And the sudden, arch, all-knowing look.
"Then you must be the gentleman who wrote the letters. The ones we returned to London. Oh yes, now I remember your face, sir. You left before the others. That's why I couldn't place you at first."
So Lily had disappeared. But Tomango was a tiny island, and she said that the hotel job was simply wonderful, the job of a lifetime, in fact. "Meeting all the movie stars in the flesh. I love waiting on them, and they say nice things to me, too." Yet she had gone, damn it. But where? Sinclair found a beach shirt and slipped it on, ignoring the buttons. He stepped out onto the veranda, then ran down the flight of wooden stairs to the second veranda below. He jumped the last 2 steps that led directly to the beach. The white sand, the blue line of sea breaking into gentle foam, the clump of wind-tossed palms, the flamingos moving stiff-leggedly a few feet away. The stinging brightness went out of the picture when he slipped on the sunglasses. And suddenly, the bone-chilling dampness of London seemed a lot farther than a jet flight away. Then Sinclair saw the boat. It lay on its side, looking flatter and wider than he remembered, with the sail pole bare and jutting out at an angle. A dark, old man was sitting in the boat's shadow, the fishing net he was mending crisscrossing his wide-spread legs. A pair of trousers, tattered and just over knee-length, was the only thing he wore. Everything was the same as it had been on that other day. Everything, only the sun seemed fiercer, brighter, if that were possible. He could feel the sweat gathering at his hairline, and his heart started a slow, heavy pounding. The dark old man didn't look up, even when Sinclair's shadow fell across the net and the lower half of his body. He cleared his throat, and when nothing happened at that, Sinclair said, "Excuse me." The old man looked up. Then he knew he hadn't made a mistake. The sun-dried face was like dark, polished oak, but the eyes were surprisingly clear and young-looking. There wasn't the slightest flicker of recognition in them, but Sinclair still said, "You remember me, don't you?"
Let the white men come and go on Tomango now. All the same to me.
The young eyes in the old face went back to the net and the mending.
You want to hire the boat?
Yes, Sinclair said, watching the old man closely. I would like to take a trip to Turk Island. A trickle of sweat came rolling down his cheek, bringing a taste of salt to the corner of his mouth. It's a tiny place, about half an hour's sail from here, just sand and coconut trees. You have to take your own water.
Me don't go there. Nobody ever go there. There's a bad spirit on Turk Island.
The old man threaded a ball of twine through a diamond-shaped space in the net.
There's Friday Island. Very nice. No bad spirits. I take you there.
Sinclair sank on one knee, and his face was now level with the old man's. You took me to Turk Island a month ago. I was staying at the hotel, the one back there. I was with a unit making a film. I'd arranged to meet a friend on Turk Island. I stayed the night on the island, and you came back for me the next day. I came back alone because my friend wanted to wait until it was dark, when some other boat would fetch her back here. He wanted to grab the net and tug it free from the slow-moving hands. He wanted the old man to look at him. Now do you remember? Do you? The old man looked up then.
This friend, so she a woman, eh?
His eyes were clear and questioning, like a child's, but the voice was only mildly curious.
What'd she look like?
She was slim and brown, Sinclair said, and very lovely. How else could one describe Lily? With the wind in her tumbling russet hair, the brown eyes shining, her laughter bubbling over with the sheer joy of living. You must remember my trip. A month isn't that long. I need someone to tell me I didn't just dream her up.
To some, a month is like all the years.
The old man looked down at his hands and the net.
Yes, mister. I remember you, taking you there and bringing you back. But why she not come and go with you?
Patience. That was all that it needed. Sinclair took a deep breath. She arranged that someone else would take her to the island and bring her back. Lily, smiling in the firelight of that night, the smooth brown arms reaching out, eagerly and unashamed. She said that everyone would gossip here if we left and came back together. Someone else did take her to Turk Island and bring her back. But who? And how do I find him? The old man shook his head.
No one got there but me.
He paused and looked up, but not at Sinclair, but out to the flamingos with their pink feet deep in the blue-white foam.
Then how she come and go from there? How she do that, mister?
Sinclair took his sunglasses off, for the sweat had run right down and streaked the lenses. The heat and the light hammered at his naked eyes. Look, he said, please help me. Please. I'm trying to find this girl. No one seems to know where she's gone. That morning you brought me back from Turk Island. There was a telegram for me at the hotel. It told me to catch the next plane leaving for London. I write stories that are made into motion pictures, movies. My bosses needed me to work on a story back in London. The old man nodded gravely, as if he fully understood the mad, hectic world that gave Sinclair a living. He was still looking out into the endless space of sea and hot sky.
This girl, you love her then?
Bearing one's heart to an old native on a West Indian beach wasn't exactly the kind of thing one did with ease. Yet Sinclair found himself saying, "Yes, I would like to marry her and take her back to London with me. I never did get the chance to tell her that. I finally said it in the letters I wrote to her, but they came back unopened. She had left her job at the hotel." Now, he couldn't stop himself. Somehow the empty beach seemed the right place for confessing, and the old man's quiet attentiveness made it almost the normal thing to do. "I had to come back at the first chance I got. I just can't forget her. It's as simple as that." Lily laughing, her whole glorious brown body shaking in merriment, like the evening on Turk Island when some insect had bitten him. "Please help. There must be someone who—" The old man dragged his eyes back slowly.
"Me. I loved her too, but too much. Too much."
Sinclair flattened a hand on the hot sand to steady himself. He said, "You? Why? What? What was she to you?"
"I was her pa."
The glare made it hard for Sinclair to focus his eyes. Was? Is she dead? He could feel himself beginning to shake as he forced the words out. "But how? When?" The old man nodded slowly too.
"She dead, yes. No one go to Turk Island but me. I take her there first, then you, mister. That day I bring you back. I never go again to Turk Island. Lily no swim. When she was a little girl, she hate water to wet her hair. Lily no swim."
Sinclair forced himself upright, and the beach was just a blast of bright color, and the gently lapping tide was suddenly roaring and crashing like full-sized breakers. "My God, you must be mad. You must be." But the old man was looking up at him, clear-eyed, head shaking sadly.
"She was bad. All bad. Like her Portuguese ma. A long time I took her to Turk Island to meet many men. And after, always I bring her back here. She like men. But Lily, she no like to marry."
The old man shook his head again.
"The day I take you to her, I say, this the last time, Lily. Last time. I warning you."
The sun still glared, but suddenly there was no heat in it at all. The sweat on Sinclair's face and chest had gone, icy cold. I'll fetch the police. God, you had no right."
"All the right in the world. It was a pa to do it. Who else? I give her time, but she was bad. All bad. Like Shema."
"You bastard! You murdering bastard!"
"And she died bad, mister. I see that she pay for she sins that way. The first day her mouth is bone dry, and the cramps in the belly is all the time, no stopping. The next day, the sun crack up her lip like knife cuts, and she drag herself under the coconut trees. She croaking like a bullfrog now, and the lips getting bigger and bigger. Her eyes too watery to see if the boat is coming, but she keep clawing at the coconut tree to stand up up and look around."
He had to stop him. He had to. Sinclair crashed down on the old man, knocking the ball of twine from the thickly corded hands, his own seeking blindly for the long, reedy neck. His feet got tangled in the net, and he slipped and crashed heavily on the thin curve of the boat, knocking the wind out of his enraged lungs, scraping his left arm on the roughness of peeling paint. He stayed for a moment, panting, flat against the boat, and the sweat was flowing more generously than ever.
"The waiter from the hotel, he coming this way."
From the old man's tone could have been a tired comment on the heat. Sinclair turned his head to look. A stocky, white-coated figure was almost on them. The black, moon-round face split into a wide grin, and there wasn't a streak of sweat on it.
"Will you come back to the hotel for lunch, sir? Or are you taking a boat trip, so you want a pack lunch, sir? The manager want to know, sir."
Sinclair stared at the waiter, his rage ebbing now, leaving a dull anger like a nagging toothache. He knew he had to do something. He took a deep breath. "Yes, I'm going for a sail. I've just been arranging it. Make it 3 bottles of mineral water and some fruit. I ought to be back by tea time." Sinclair was standing upright now, and behind him he could feel that the old man was on his feet too, already busy with preparations for the trip. "Make it as quick as you can. I'll see you this evening when I get back."
"Right, sir."
The waiter was streaking back to the hotel, was already halfway there when Sinclair turned to the old man. The net had been neatly bundled with the ball of twine lying on top of it, and the old man was now in the boat, adjusting the sail pole, moving with the easy agility of someone half his age. That Sinclair remembered too from the other time. He watched the old man until the hate in his eyes burned a response, for the old man stopped, turned his head, and said, still calm,
"What you hope to find, mister?"
"Lily," Sinclair said. "Christ, man, she could be alive. She could have found water and food of some sort. There must be water on the island. Your bloody weather isn't always perfect. It rains, remember? Then there's the possibility that she could have been taken off by some passing boat, in spite of what you say." The old man cut him short by saying again,
"No one go to Turk Island but me. Nobody."
The oddly young eyes met his.
"Rainfall, yes, but on that island, it make frog water right away. Oh, slimy and green. Not for drinking, even if you're dying for water. Only water for frogs."
The old man got nimbly out of the boat, bent and pushed, and the shallow shell moved easily, came flat and upright, and in a moment the surf was washing creamily against the prow, the stern still anchoring the boat to the sand. Sinclair said nothing more to the old man after that. They waited, the old man sitting placidly on the boat's edge, while Sinclair gazed impatiently back at the hotel through the sunglasses he had been forced to slip on again. The waiter came in sight, a blob of hurrying white, then soon just a few yards away, hugging a straw carrier bag that was a plug for the local cottage industry.
"All here, sir. 3 bottles of the mineral, slices of pineapple, and bits of cold chicken. That okay, sir?"
"Fine, thank you. And be sure I see you around this evening, will you?"
"Yes, sir."
The waiter shot a bright glance at the silent old man.
"You take good care of the gentleman, Ramos. You hear?"
The waiter grinned whitely at them both and turned and went streaking back to the shade of the verandas. Ramos. So that was the old man's name. "Okay, Ramos," Sinclair said curtly. "We are going to bring Lily back to Tomango." He stepped in, holding the straw bag. The old man pushed the boat deep into the surf and, with that surprising agility, hopped on board too. Sinclair settled himself in the prow, the bag at his feet, watching the old man smoothly run the sail up and move to the tiller, and in a minute they had caught the hot wind and were tacking out of the sheltered bay in a wide, sweeping curve, heading for the open sea. A sea that glinted like blue glass and was almost as smooth. He watched the old man, seething at the placid unconcern, at the sureness with which everything was done. A killer. No, a would-be killer. Yet the old man sat there at the tiller with the serenity of a child unconscious of sin. Sinclair could have lunged at him once again, but he was wary of just being afloat, never quite happy in boats, large or small, and boats didn't come much smaller than this one. Then suddenly, he remembered. Coconuts! Of course, the coconuts! They're filled with water and that white fleshy meat. Lily could shin up a tree, couldn't she? They do it all day on Tomango. That's enough to keep her alive. She'll be alive. I know she'll be. Sinclair stopped then, for the curiously clear eyes had come around to meet his hooded ones, and there was something in them.
"You no see that though the coconut trees all got nice leaves, fresh and green. All the nuts is dead nuts. All the nuts dry up long before they grow full and big."
Pity was what the eyes mirrored.
"That time you go by night, you no see the bad part of Turk Island. And you must remember about the carrion crabs."
The sun was hammering at his bare head, draping his shoulders like a hot towel. Yet Sinclair was suddenly shivering again. What? What sort of crabs? The old man shook his head.
"We no talk about that."
"Oh, we will. We will talk, you murdering bastard. And we'll find Lily very much alive. I just know that she is." Quicksilver, resourceful, laughing Lily. No spooky island could snuff out that animal vitality. Sinclair took a deep breath, hoping to calm his suddenly queasy stomach. "Okay, Ramos. Just forget about your damn crabs and get us to the island. On that trip, we did it in less than half an hour. Or was it just the high excitement of anticipated lovemaking that had made the trip seem short, sending the boat skimming through the sudden dusk of that unforgettable evening? Lily. Darling Lily. I'm on my way to bring you back." But the old man was saying, loudly now, high above the swell of water,
"They big as turtles, but they hide until there is something dead. They no eat the flesh of the living, never, mister. But the moment you dead, they know. Then they come marching out, all in rows and rows. They get to the body, and then they arrange it, like Christ on the cross. First they pin the hands and the legs down, with big claws that break off easy.
the special claws for pinning down the body to the blaze. And they use the real ripping claws to tear at the flesh when they get down to the eating. Sudden alarm flared in the clear eyes when Sinclair stood up, shakily, making the light boat rock furiously.
You want to pitch us in the sea, mister? Sit down, mister. Look, we're very near Turk Island now.
The old man locked the tiller under a dark armpit, his hands reaching out to steady the boat. He said softly,
You may be right, mister. Lily, she alive perhaps. More than perhaps. She's a clever, clever gal.
He took away the oak-colored hand to gesture.
Look, mister. You just look over your shoulder.
Sinclair sat down then and looked. Turk Island was a swaying green smudge on his right. A smudge that grew more definite and vividly green with every passing second. Then they were tacking smoothly around a rocky headland, and the glassy blue of the sea was suddenly trapped in the small, still lagoon. That too he remembered. The old man lowered the sail and produced an oar, exactly as before, in the dark of that other evening. But now it was eye-searing sunlight, and Sinclair was suddenly aware of the odd feature that he had overlooked on his first trip. That Turk Island was utterly and unnaturally silent. The sand stretched away, white and unmarked, into a thick line of coconut trees that neither thrashed nor whispered, as they did perpetually in the high winds of Tomango. But here no winds blew, no brilliant flash of bird feathers, no chatter of monkeys, no squawk from the parrots, nothing but sunlight and the strange, dead silence. Sinclair sat in the gently bobbing boat, stunned with utter disbelief that it had been like this too that other time, and yet he had noticed nothing. But then there had been the all-pervading need to possess Lily. And in the silence, the old man pedal-steered the boat onto the beach and sprang over the side.
Very quiet, eh?
He stood ankle-deep in the blue water and held out a hand to Sinclair.
We look, mister, but we no look for long. This is a bad, bad place.
Sinclair stood up, ignoring the hand, fixing his sunglasses on the old man's face. I'd better find her alive, Ramos. I'd start praying if I were... He stopped then, for he had seen something that transfixed him with blazing joy. High up on the beach, on the thick snake-like roots of the coconut trees, Lily stood waiting, the gay pattern of her caftan-type dress she'd worn bright against the expanse of white sand. Waiting, but too weak to run to him, but alive. Lily! Lily! Sinclair tumbled out of the boat, fell flat in the clear blue water, picked himself up, then, dripping but exhilarant, he struck at Ramos as the old man moved to block his path. Get out of the way, you fool! Lily, she's there, in the trees, can't you see? But Sinclair was running now, a shambling, skidding kind of run, his eyes riveted to that beckoning dress. At last he was stumbling over the contorted, uncovered roots of the coconut trees, among the crackling dead branches, and then he reached her. Only it was Lily's dress, and not Lily. pinned high on the knotty trunks with a few huge thorns, just a flag of distress that no wind stirred, a futile signal that no one had seen. He reached up and ripped it down, and the fabric tore loudly in the unnatural stillness. Sinclair was very near to sobbing. Then, Lily, thank God. For this time, it was her. The mass of coppery hair caught the sun's glare deep in the grove of palms. Her head was propped high on a twisted root, and he wasn't too late. He stumbled nearer and nearer as the gloom deepened, and then he fell almost on top of her. Lily, darling. Sinclair reached out for her hair, rippling gently as she restlessly turned her head, and his hand went deep into the soft mass. And then he shrieked with sudden pain. His fingers had instantly been pricked by 1,000 red-hot needles. Too late, he saw the mass of busy ants that were giving the constant motion to Lily's hair as it streamed out and over the giant root. And Lily, oh God, Lily. Beyond the glorious hair, her white, fleshless bones now lay spread-eagled, as the crabs must have pinned her. The skeleton hands and feet were each wearing the grotesque adornment of a great, curving claw, half buried in the sandy soil. Sinclair struggled up, waving a burning hand in agony, and looked down into the grinning skull, framed by the coppery, moving hair. Then he found he was running and sobbing as he ran, that he was now free of the coconut grove and making for the boat, that a voice, hoarse with hate, was shouting close to his ear. "Ramos! You murdering bastard! I'm going to—" Ramos turned. He'd been bending over by the boat, and when the old man faced him across the rapidly narrowing beach, Sinclair could see that he was clutching a huge stone, his lean arms tensing with holding it high, ready to smash it down on him. But Sinclair didn't care. He was younger, stronger, and his hate propelled him on like a bullet from a gun. "You're joining her, Ramos! I'll be leaving you dead for those damn crabs!" But Sinclair was just a few yards away when the old man dropped the stone into the water of the lagoon and started walking very slowly towards him. Sinclair stumbled for a moment in sheer surprise. Then he was in reaching distance, and he threw himself on Ramos, and his hands closed over the old man's throat, over an Adam's apple big as a half-swallowed plum. He started squeezing madly, mercilessly, and Ramos never made a move to fight back. For one crazy moment, before the young-looking eyes started rolling, popping, Sinclair caught a look in them that could only be described as joyous. He even thought that when the old man tried to croak out something, in the first few seconds the words sounded oddly like, "We all bad, mister. All bad, mister." Sinclair couldn't be sure. He couldn't be sure of anything he did in those few minutes. He only knew that he took his hands away when the harsh croaking finally stopped, and Ramos sagged, lifeless, against him. Then Sinclair was looking down at the dark, thin-stick body lying with the curious awkwardness of an abandoned puppet An arm under the chest, the head with its bulging eyes and lolling tongue, pointing past his trembling feet up to the rise of white sand and the grove of coconut trees. He was still staring at the thing at his feet, panting, the sweat running off him in a salty tide, when Sinclair heard the first sound on the island that he hadn't made. A curious, swishing, scraping sound, like sand being shifted by 100 busy shovels. He thought he knew then what he would see, even before he turned his head sharply and looked in the direction where the old man's eyes were blankly watching them advance. But the size and color of the crabs held Sinclair rooted and staring in utter disbelief. A myriad scrabbling claws were propelling their huge, shiny black shells in a slittering, skidding run across the white sand. Line upon armored black line, the carrion crabs were pouring endlessly out from the roots of the sheltering palms, heading for the thing at his feet in a mad, famished rush. The hoarse voice was again shrieking in his ear as Sinclair turned and ran for the safety of the open lagoon and the boat.
No! Oh, Christ! No!
He splashed into the warm blue water and pushed madly at the boat to get it completely clear of the sand, for Ramos had beached it half in and half out of the water. He kept on frantically pushing for a full, sweating minute, but he couldn't budge it. The boat didn't move, not even an inch. Sobbing and gasping, Sinclair finally threw himself over the side and looked in. The blue, clear water splashed softly inside, filling the boat, giving it the look of an exotically shaped bathtub. The straw basket lay, half submerged, still holding the broken glass of the 3 smashed bottles, with the bits of food bobbing gently like edible soft toys. He knew then what Ramos had been doing with the huge stone, the stone that had never meant to be used as a weapon of defense, only of destruction. Sinclair stared into the boat for what seemed a long, long time. Then, still thigh-deep in the water, he finally turned and looked back up the beach. He didn't want to, but some irresistible force twisted his throbbing head so that he could look at the carrion crabs doing their grisly work. The old man had already been neatly spread-eagled, 4 great claws pinning his hands and feet to the hot, white sand, and Sinclair had turned at the very moment when the eating had begun. With the first sound of tearing flesh, he caught the hideous stench of the giant crabs, like that of an unhosed slaughterhouse in the heat of high summer. He sank slowly into the blue water, resting his head on the useless boat, then cried like a lost child, for he knew that he would remain lost for as long as he remained alive. No rescuing boat would sail into the still lagoon. In the end, though, he knew that he would be found. The carrion crabs would know, to the very second, just when to set out in search of him. Production, sound design and editing by Brenden James. Please support the Black Dog Chronicles by liking this video, sharing on your favorite social media, and subscribing. As always, we thank you for listening. This is Hugh Carr.
Is it possible that you are missing out on new editions of the Black Dog Chronicles? Oh no! Don't despair. Simply remember to click the notification bell next to the subscribe button on our channel. Never miss another edition of the Black Dog Chronicles again.